Tastemakers in the watch game like Gear Patrol have called their ceramic watch material almost magical and deemed their adventure-ready Cali Diver Automatic GMT the best sub-$500 dive watch, full stop. It's our friends at Movement. A Movement watch is built to run with precision, purpose, and X factors needed to make the best of the time you keep. From their best-selling automatics to innovative ceramics to more clean, inspired designs. Find your new Movement now at MVMT.com. That's MVMT.com.
And so, let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
You're listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley, and with me today is my good friend and Make It podcast co-host, Nicholas Buds.
Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast, and this is an Indie Talk week, and that means I'm here with my co-founder and good friend, Nicholas Bugs. Nick, say hello.
I love it. Oh, man, I was all melodic with it. First, I was going to point out that was a strong this, bro. Oh, man, I said, and this, like, don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
This right here, right here, is the Make It podcast.
That's right.
And yes, hello.
That's our second hello drop in an Indie Talk.
It is. Oh, it's got to be. Yeah.
The Lionel Richie version of hello, by the way. The only version that matters.
There you go.
No, I can't say that. The Dill's version is fire.
Yeah, Dill's is great. Yes, it is. It is.
I can't say that. I don't want to be a hater. No,
not at all. No. You don't hate.
Because we'll talk about that a little bit today, about like why we shouldn't hate just because Lionel's a black dude.
What?
we shouldn't show favoritism. This has been an incredible week or so. We have, in the last 2 days, dropped 5 hours of podcast interview goodness. So we had a Juneteenth cast with Chris Haley.
Yep. Awesome person.
Always has something to say. Opinionated, strong opinions. You don't have to pull things out of them. It always, every time I get him on a call or on a podcast, I feel like, okay, I'm in this cast to learn something I didn't know before. And because of the way the conversations happen, they can literally go in any direction. And I started to think about if we should sort of lean in that direction with our interviews. We're past 100 at this point. And as we go into the next phase and we're growing, this idea of being able to sort of talk about anything we want to, but in the context of two creatives speaking, I'm really interested in that idea versus confining the conversation to filmmaking only. It's one of these things where I realized we were doing a filmmaking podcast, but as you've mentioned before, Nick, the creative is a whole person.
That's right.
And
That's right.
all those people, all those things that make you that whole person have to be addressed and talked about. And I enjoyed it. I got to read a couple of his poems. The entire book is provocative. So I would go get it. It's called Fists and Rainbows, with one fist in the air and holla. It was #1 Amazon several times over the last, I think, 2 months in poetry. So go pick it up. It's great. Chris Haley was awesome. And we had another Chris. There are 3 Chris's if you add me in. It's like Chris everywhere.
All right.
So Chris everywhere. It was Chris St. Croix.
You're right.
And not the hockey player, but the filmmaker. And he is, and I think we're going to touch on this a little bit later in terms of just like how much inspiration is too much inspiration. How much humility is too much. How much of all these attributes is too much. And I almost think he's too humble. He could, I'm glad that we were able to have him on the podcast because I wanted to promote him. You know, I want people to see what he's all about. I told him right there in the cast, I thought he was one of the best filmmakers we've ever interviewed. His movies are unbelievable. The stuff that he pulls off is unbelievable. The thing to focus on with him is when you watch his movies, he built the whole set himself.
Yeah. And you know, he's been in so many different pockets of the industry.
Yeah.
Right. And that also lends itself to his ability to do all of those things, which is awesome.
Yep. Exactly. So it's, he's a remarkable filmmaker, too humble. I think people should know how good he is, and he should be out there telling people how good he is, but in a non-annoying way.
Right.
But both these conversations were marathon conversations because they were with people who could elucidate, and can talk about a variety of things and have lived a rich life. Like when you hear about the things Chris St. Croix has done with his life, you're like, whoa.
Right.
Like I wasn't kidding. I said it in the interview. Like I've only gotten through half my notes and we're 3 hours in.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Now the podcast is 3 hours because I edited it down. Right. But we were talking for a long time, and I promise you, I was only through half my notes. I had so much more to ask him, but we just kept...
The conversation flowed, man, and that's when you just let it be. It's organic, it's real, it's raw, and you just let it flow.
Yeah, that's what happened. So I think in this case, these are the kind of podcasts that you can listen to over 2 or 3 days to finish. It's not going to hurt you to break them up and to consume them in small bites. And they're highly, highly evergreen. There is filmmaking stuff in them. There is like something for the creative in both of those, or a lot for the creative in both of those. And not just the technical, but the emotional, the realities of it all. So really proud of that. And our newsletter, Nick. Also, I want to just mention that newsletter is just getting rave reviews, and
a lot of great attention.
I think we've been too humble about the newsletter. I think we've been too humble about it, and we need to let more people know about it. It comes out every 2 weeks, and every time it comes out, I get an email from someone saying, another great newsletter. This was so valuable. Send me the link to this. Can you give me more information on this data or on this thing? And honestly, the whole thing was born out of us just wanting to promote the creatives that we know, this audience, all sorts of creatives from around the world that are making cool things. And we said, well, let's just platform them and get them more eyes than they had before. And the whole thing is just taking off. So
yeah, and it's great. And we have a lot of great support from the team, to make that happen.
Yep.
So we really appreciate everybody who's working with us to get that content out there in the world. And like you said, yeah, big shouts out and big thank you to the folks who comment back, and tell us that we're doing the thing, right? We're doing it well. And we really appreciate that. I did want to jump back on the Chris conversation.
Yeah.
And just say that, when people are listening to it, when we're listening to it, when the audience is listening, like you said before, we're doing a filmmaking podcast, but it's more about the filmmakers. Yeah. And it's really about, there's a lot of conversation right now out there in the workforce about bringing your whole self to work. Yeah. Right. And I think that that's what we want people to bring to the podcast, because, if you want to hear about the fleeting thing, and when I say the fleeting thing, it's usually like the latest project, the latest thing. There's tons of places to go to get that. And I say tons of places because they're really repetitive, right? Someone will say, well, tell me about your latest film. And, let's talk about that. And it was at Tribeca, or it was here. And then the next interview is the same, right? Whoa, you were featured at this place, and let's talk about your film. It's the same conversation over and over and over again, to the point that the filmmakers can basically just regurgitate what they said the last time. And we strive not to do that, right?
We're not a press junket interview.
Exactly. We're not that. Even though, like you said, we want to promote people, it's promoting them, their work, and who they are as human beings. We want people to listen to these podcast episodes and say, wow, right? Like, I would like to work with that person. Yep. Right. That's it. That human being first. And I think that that's what those conversations are. And that's why they go the way that they go so naturally, because you're giving runway for these people to bring their whole selves to work. That's very important for us.
Absolutely. I completely agree. But I want to jump back on what you said there about bringing your whole self to work. Yep. There is a test. Well, there are multiple tests. But the one I like is called the DISC profile, DISC. And that's an acronym. I don't know what the acronym stands for anymore. I think the C is compliance. I think the I is influencer, or not influencer. It's, it might be influence. I don't even know. Anyway, it's DISC. It's a DISC profile. To me, it's better than Enneagram, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's better than the Myers-Briggs, which I think is actually very good, and I've taken that before. But this is the reason I say it's better is because you get a booklet that is about 60 pages long when you do it the right way, not the online version, but you take it, at a place. You get this giant booklet that tells you what to do with the information. Right? Like, one of the hallmarks of our current society is that we have all the information at our fingertips and don't know what to do with it. No clue. Yeah. One of the hallmarks of the last 2 generations is that they have all the information in the world at their fingertips, but don't know which questions to ask. They don't know the right questions to ask. So a big part of being, to me, successful, especially in business, but also creative, is not necessarily which questions you get answered, but knowing what's an important question to ask, and understanding how things work and what the infrastructure is. And if you don't have those words, or know what to say, or know what to ask, then you're just going to get what's placed in front of you. And what's placed in front of you, in the creative realm is, hey, we'll pay you $700,000 for your film in 24 months. And you got to learn to ask the right question. So anyway, right. DISC profile tells you who you are, right? It tells you who you are at work and who you are outside of work. And those are supposed to be different personalities. Outside of work, inside of work. Mine are the same. And so one of the things they told me, or the feedback, the data told me, is here are some tools to not get yourself in trouble with that trait, because I'm the same person inside and outside of work. I can do things that might press the limits or the boundaries of what's appropriate at work. That's why DISC is great, because it taught me that I don't need to make the workplace bend to me, but that I should be melding into the workplace. And one of the things we saw this week that we wanted to talk about was something that it was just a throwaway quote from Forbes. And it just, I think we find meaning in the mundane, because I think that, me coming from the journalism background and you coming from a background of academia growing up, and then, structured sort of detail that comes with being a computer science major, that detail that you have to just have the math right. We noticed the minutia and realized, you do that every day over the span of a year and it becomes a thing. And you're actually pushing an agenda or pushing an idea that eventually gets absorbed and framed into people's minds. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to go further here without giving the audience what we read in Forbes. So this is an article, by the way, right? And not a title of our article. This was just like, can you describe what this was, Nick, to everybody?
Yeah, there's a quote within the article. So before I get to that, I'll offer you the DISC acronym. So the D is dominance. Yeah. The I is influence. The S is steadiness. And the C is compliance.
Yes. And you can be high or low in any of these areas.
Right.
Okay. I'm a low C, and I scored the high. This is not good for me. This is not good for me to mention this.
low in compliance.
I scored the highest I in the class of 30 people.
Influence. Well, that's very good.
No. It's too high. It was considered. It was considered just below being a problem, I think, is where it scored.
How do you stretch boundaries? Right. You can't stretch it if you're not at the edge, right? If you can't touch the edge, you can't push the boundaries. So I think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think what they're telling you is be mindful that you are at the edge.
Yeah.
Right. And if you go over the edge, then that's when you potentially break the compliance. Right. You break that and then you cause a problem. But man, live on the edge, dude. That's what we do.
Living on the
edge. So the quote, kind of what we're talking about. I'm going to look up an article here that talks about it. I know that there was a Legends of Culture event series to spotlight change makers in communities of color. And one of the events took place this past week on Forbes on 5th, celebrating women of color who are changing the game in their respective industries and paving the way for others. Okay. So one of the folks there, there was obviously all these folks are speaking to the audience, and, the article says that there was, many opportunities for people to, they jumped up and they were, yelling in the affirmative. They were like, yes, we believe, yes, I hear you, and it's awesome. You want that type of enthusiasm. You want that type of engagement. But before reading the full article, and I still don't have the full context to the quote, but I saw this thing pop up on Instagram, and, Forbes and other places do it. I mean, we do it, right? We'll pull a quote that we think is meaningful and we'll share that with our audience. And Forbes shared this quote, and it says, "Be who you are and the world will adjust." And, when I saw that, it kind of hit me, right? And it hit me because I do a lot in my life, whether it's, in my personal life, my creative life, my professional life, all of these things blend for me, just like you, Chris, where it's like, I'm the same person in all these places where I do want to be an inspiration for other people. I want to be inspirational, right, to other people. I'm always, the positive guy. I'm the one who's trying to push things forward. But when I see or read or hear a quote like this, again, without any other additional context, it seems like it goes one step too far, right? It's like there's a point where you take aspiration so far, right? Just like in your profile, right? Where it's like you're on the edge. Yeah. It's like you take aspiration one step too far that now you break your connection with reality. Mm-hmm. So again, to bring it back, the quote was, be who you are and the world will adjust. Now, again, you want to bring your whole self to the work. You want to be who you are. That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about, right? Bringing unique, diverse voices, everyone being a part of the whole. But the idea that being who you are and then everything else will bend to your will, I think it just, like I said, it goes one step too far. Everyone else isn't going to bend to you, right? The world will not automatically adjust to your uniqueness. There is still a fight to be had. I was just in a number of panels on, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, one female filmmaker, said she's still fighting to be in the room. Right. Like still today, she's like, I still have to fight to be in the room. Right. Right. So it's still a fight. Yeah. That world for her is not just bending to the uniqueness in her voice and who she is and her authentic self, even though she brings that to the table every day.
What was the context of that? What is the room and what is she fighting? What does she mean by fighting to get into what room?
So, you could take it in its broad context, which is like the industry, right? If she wants to be a writer, right, she has to prove herself maybe a little bit more, right, than other folks who might have had an easier step into that room. As a director, as an animator, the room might already be filled with folks who look a certain way or who tell certain stories, and she has a unique outlook. Yeah, right. She has a unique vision, and she's like, well, I have to fight for the folks who are already in the room to accept my vision, right? To accept my community, to accept my blackness, right? To accept my brownness, like whatever it is. And that's where she still feels like she's still fighting. And I think a lot of people feel that way. That's why there's summits like this. Yeah. Right. Where we have to get these, black and brown and female and whatever the case may be, these, creators together to inspire other people. So I get it. I get the nature of the comment, right? About be who you are. Again, my only pushback, if you will, is I think sometimes it can be dangerous not to recognize the real, right? The fact that the fight still exists.
It's tough and complex to try to make sense of it. On one hand, I know that there is difficulty for minorities to get a fair shake. And it's across industry. Like, for example, there's less VC and angel money given to Black people, for example, than other groups, even other minority groups. How do you make sense of it? I mean, the other side of it, though, is it's hard and it's a fight for everyone to get in that room. I've never heard any person of any background say making it in the film and television industry was easy. Like, when was it easy to get a writing job? There's only I think something like 1,000 to 1,400 working writers in all of industry that isn't an indie. So you're talking about winning the lottery in a lot of ways. And then you're coming back and saying, can you believe this? I didn't win the lottery. And like, yeah, like keep buying tickets, like because that's, that's what you have to do. And so that's why it gets a little bit, it's tough. Cause like on one hand, I know it's true because I've lived it and it's a shared experience. But on the other hand, like I have that shared experience with her, I should say. But on the other hand, it's not easy for anyone. And I think that sometimes as a Black person, and as Black people, we have a choice to make a lot of times. And we have to figure out if it's valid or not. And the choice is, did I not get this because I'm not good enough? Or did I not get this because I'm Black?
That's a
it's a really tough thing. It's a really tough thing to have to decide.
Or to validate.
Or to validate.
I mean, unless it's blatant, right? Unless it's in your face, it's very difficult.
Yeah. Did I? And it comes down to, all things. Like for example, I mentioned, I'll stick with it because I mentioned it. I mentioned the VC and angel industry. So I mentioned it comes down to all things, like all industries. Well, what you find out is those would-be entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that aren't getting funded. What you find out is those VCs and angels don't end up funding those businesses because they don't relate to and have no idea about the culture and lifestyle. Yeah. So it's not that the idea is bad or good or anything like that. It's just that they feel like they're the wrong investor for them because they can't be useful and helpful. And that's why there's this enormous crop of Black VCs starting to crop up and pop up everywhere across Silicon Valley and New York and other places. Just because it's just a fact of life that we say the same thing about writers, like write what you know, right? But that's not to say that if you're a white person and you have an Asian story to tell, not to write it. I would never say that. I respect your free speech. I respect your creativity and your ability and your need to write what's on your heart and on your mind. But when you make that choice, you better be right. That's all. You better be correct because people will know when it doesn't ring true. And you'll have to pay a price for that. A lot of people think that free speech means I say whatever I want. No, you say whatever you want. First of all, hate speech isn't covered. 2, you say whatever you want and there are consequences. And you have to take the consequences as fairly as the other group that had to hear or absorb your speech, whether that be through a screenplay, teleplay, Twitter, whatever. So, I mean, do your thing, but know your stuff. And I think a lot of times that's what happens. Like you get into a pitch and you're Black and you pitch a Black story, it feels authentic. You're a Black person and you go in and you pitch, something that people don't stereotypically believe is Black, which is super unfortunate. Then you don't get the pitch. And I think you talked to Cameras, is that his name? Cameras Johnson, recently about this. And he's like, once you get that first job that maybe you got because you were telling a Black story, then after that, you can tell the real story you had on your heart. Because
it
really reflected what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and it's that idea of getting in the room, right? You use that to get into the room. And once you're in the room, then you have the opportunity to sell other things. But I think, you hit a very important point, and this is one of the 4 whys that we always talk about, right? Yeah. And that's that last one, which is the why me as the audience of your pitch, right? Yeah. Or the audience of your story, or anyone you're speaking to that you're trying to engage to finance you, to sponsor you, to watch your stuff. It's the why. And maybe that's a big challenge for folks right now who are in this, diverse space, this multicultural space where they're pitching and they're not, and let's just make the assumption that what they do is good.
Yeah.
As in they do quality work, but it's not working for them. It's not, they're not getting the pitch done. They're not finding success. It could come back to what you said before, which is all the other stuff, all the other whys make sense. The first why, right? Why you? Oh, this is my story. I lived it. Why now? Well, the current zeitgeist is this, why this film? Because this story means so much and it means this, that. All those things are covered. You did it. I mean, understand it. But it's that last one where the people that you're pitching just do not have the connection to the content. Yeah. Again, not saying anything about quality, right? Not saying anything about, even diversity. Like, it's not that they don't want to tell you that story. It's just, it doesn't connect.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe for some other folks who are finding success, it's because they're going with the same pitch to the right people.
Yeah.
Right. You pitch the wrong person, it's a no every time. Right. And maybe that's it. Is it maybe like you were saying about the industry or being someone who's in the industry and not knowing what questions to ask. Maybe that's part of the challenge. You don't know the right people to talk to. And because you're not talking to the right people, you're not getting the responses. And so it has nothing to do with, but again, potentially it may have nothing to do with the color of your skin, your gender, or anything else. It may be that you're just in the wrong room or trying to get in the wrong room to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge, right? Like that's what we need mentors to help us through this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I go back to what you said about Forbes, be yourself and the world will adjust. Well, on one hand, it's like, okay, maybe that's taken out of context. I'd like to see the entire quote. I'd like to see the entire thing. Because maybe in that moment, the person that said that, the young lady that said that, was just being quixotic. It was just like or just aspirational. This will be a great click. Like, this will be a great clip but we think that Forbes knows what they're doing. We think they pulled that on purpose to put that out. And so the real reality with that is people of all backgrounds are going to read that. And the bottom line is, if I'm Arthur Fleck, AKA the Joker,
right,
I don't need to be myself. The world should not adjust to me. And I've said this all the time. People always say, be yourself. Just be yourself. Just do you, boo.
You're
right. Like, no, if you're an asshole, stop doing you.
Stop being an asshole.
Like, do so. We need this stuff in our lives, and we don't want to admit it.
Right.
We need someone to look up to. We need examples of greatness. We need mentors. We need a reason to get out of the bed in the morning. We need hope. People have to stop bullshitting about that stuff. No, we need that stuff. I need to believe that the sun, the nuclear reactor in the sky, is going to stay there for another, million millennia.
Right.
I need to know that the goal I'm trying to reach the next day isn't going to be usurped by the fact that there's going to be a nuclear war. Like, we need, and rendered meaningless because everything's fucking nihilistic or whatever, right? And it's just like, we fool ourselves when we say that you just need to be the person you were raised to be. Well, that's true for some people. And there's a lot of people that it's not true of. I heard something today on a talk show where one of the hosts was asked, because he didn't grow up with his dad. And one of the hosts was asked, would you rather have a dad that yelled at you and was mean, or no dad? And he was like, are you kidding me? I'll take the mean dad. And so people get flippant. They don't understand. And by the way, that person was black and the person asking was white. Not that matters, but what I'm saying in that is it's changed now. But in the 80s and 90s and early aughts, then, you might see a fatherless home in the black community, or two or three. And none of my friends growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in had dads but me. I was the only one with a dad. Only one. Now, you came along and you have a dad, and I was like, that's pretty cool. That must be a well-balanced guy. So anyway, right. The point is I think people get flippant about how important a dad is to the kid. And they grow up and realize, it would have been so different for me had my dad not died, or had he not left, or had he, whatever, been in my life more. So we just pretend that like we're good who we are and everybody's good who they are. Everybody's perfect. No, I had to get multiple mentors to get out of the situation that I was in. Not that I was in some terrible situation. Right. It was just that it's like to get beyond it, I should say. To get beyond what I was given, I needed people, like you said, Nick, to help me, pull me up, mentor me, guide me, give me some principle, give me some philosophy. So no, you can't just let the world adjust, which, by the way, I think she stole from Tupac from the song Hail Mary.
Yeah, right.
Where he said, Mama said, don't stop until I bust a nut. Fuck the world if they can't adjust. Right. Just as well, Hail Mary. I think it's like the lyric. So I think she was just, again, being quixotic, doing being inspirational. Here's the Tupac line. I'm going to adjust it for me. And then Forbes grabbed it, clipped it, and put it out there for everybody to read. And now, to double down on people being maybe not their best selves.
Yeah, and this is the time. Again, it's zeitgeist. This is the time. Again, it's still the month of June, right? So it's still very much Pride Month. Yep. There's the zeitgeist of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, yep. I was just on a panel for that. Yep. So, this is the zeitgeist. This is the era of positivity, and maybe, again, it goes too far. I think that if we were to amend that quote, right, if we were to adjust it, it would be who you are, find your tribe, and find a mentor.
Yep. Yeah, because it's right? It's a complex thing to navigate, is it not? I mean,
yes.
I'll end this on this. I'll wrap us on this, and this thought, and then please feel free to jump in with any retort that you have on this. But I think it's so complex that the number one thing as a creative you can count on, and when I say it's so complex, the world as a whole, in terms of how you're supposed to navigate your way through it, no matter what your background is, it's so complex that I think the number one thing to do is to double down on what your best assets are and minimize what your deficiencies are.
Right. I agree.
While in the quiet, working on those deficiencies, or getting even better at the thing that makes you unique and great, versus trying to figure out, okay, in this situation, do I play the race card? In this situation, should I play the minority card or the LGBTQIA plus card? Should I play the female creator card? In this situation, should I go in there and be like Steve Jobs? Should I bust in the room and be like, XYZ person? Instead of trying to figure out the angle, it can be useful, but I think the main thing is, and the tough thing is to really know yourself, to really know what you like, what makes you tick, what makes you work, and then double down on that. I had a young lady I was mentoring 5 years ago. She was in her mid-20s, and she was concerned that she sounded too Southern to be taken seriously in the room. A big Southern accent. I said, you shouldn't change your accent. You should actually double down on it. You should try to almost maybe think about what worked for Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde. And I said, what worked for her in that movie is that she knew her shit. She knew her stuff.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it comes down to. You're right.
So what you're actually insecure about is that you don't know your stuff and you sound like this, which is a double no-no.
Right.
But when you're like the most credible person and you know your stuff, then it becomes a feature, not a bug, that you have that 70%. So that's an example of what I mean about finding what is your strength, what makes you different, what makes you unique, what makes you compelling, and then minimizing your deficiencies by like not doing that humble thing or that fake humility thing where you bring up that you're bad at this or bad at that, or I'm not really this good at that, but don't do that. Just minimize those deficiencies and show people your best self if you can. And then once you do that, if you have to make these choices about, maybe using a different angle or being, like deploying some other kind of strategy, then you can go there.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that. And as we close, it's just, as you've identified, who you are and you've embraced who you are, then just find the right rooms to be in. I think, again, back to the quote earlier about the world will adjust. It's not, but there are rooms that are waiting for you, right? There's someone holding the door open, waiting for you to walk through it.
Yep.
Because of that unique talent, of that unique skill, of the community that you're a part of. And you don't have to beat down that door, right? So that's the thing. Like maybe you don't have to fight. Find your tribe, find the right rooms to be in, find mentors to help you overcome some of those deficiencies. And then I think your perception of the world will adjust.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Do the anti-Monique. No, I'm just kidding. a little, because I'm glad she got her money from Netflix. I'm glad she got her money. I'm genuinely glad, but I still also agree with the fact that she's, having watched her stand up at least 5 times. So I've been a fan. Loved her in Precious. Not as funny as these other comedians that got paid more. Sorry.
Right.
Just not. And at what point does a private business, I guess they're a publicly traded business, but at what point does a business have no right to negotiate their outgoing capital, fees, whatever?
On the next Indie Talk.
Yeah, and then maybe on the next Indie Talk, because I got to see what role unions played in the lawsuit and what roles unions play in a Netflix deal like that in the first place.
And I'd be curious about what data was put forth during the case that Netflix had behind the scenes that would cause them to lose as well, because it's viewership, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure played into the discussion. So
yeah, I think the thing that probably played in was you put the judge in this situation where he or she would have to be subjective about a fair market rate based on what you've given others.
Man, the judge was like, "Man, she funny."
Yeah, exactly.
Why you tripping?
And I think maybe that was part of Monique's point too. Is like, look, if you had offered me, just for example, if you had offered me $500,000 for a special, and then I find out that Tag Navarro, what's her name? Or let's say Amy Schumer, since I can't say her name for some reason, even though she's really funny, the girl I was just thinking about. And you found out Amy Schumer got 600, she probably would have been okay with that. I mean, she probably would have lived. Like, okay, I get it. But if she finds out Schumer got 15 million,
right,
and she got 500, that's a problem. That is a problem.
That's a challenge, my friend.
Yeah. It happens in every industry. Like it happens in sports. The second some player sees that another player got paid more than them and they think they're better than them, they call their agent.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's
new contract. Business, time for a new contract. Yeah, no way that guy's making more than me. There's no way.
Yeah.
And that's how the thing is, is we eat ourselves, and we do this in film too. So as fees raise and things raise, that means the cost of everything raises, and the harder it would be for an independent filmmaker to make a movie. So it's a double-edged sword. The double-edged sword. And
you're good. Look, we're on a high, positive, spiritual,
I'm going to try
inspirational note.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do my part. Okay, you're going to try to do your part to help this problem out, but we won't get into that now.
Right.
Okay, we will end on the inspirational note. Okay, so say something inspirational in it.
Be the best version of yourself and look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And doggone it, people like me. That is all.
But not at the workplace. At the workplace, just be good. Good at your job. Do that first. And then
there you go. Do good things. Do good work. Yeah.
Nick, this has been a blast, per usual. And for those listening, I hope you enjoyed our lively banter as well. We've got so much more coming for the rest of this year. The interviews are going to be popping. It's going to be great. More mistakes in the making coming. More industry insights. More newsletter fun and reading to do. More blog posts. More solutions for indie filmmakers. More panels. We'll have a panel talk coming up really soon that we are going to drop on you. So the fountain of content is not going to end anytime soon. So thanks for hanging in there with us. We'll have some cool stuff for you guys too outside of content as well. So keep your ear to the ground on that. You can always reach out to us at any time at contact@bonsai.film. And we mentioned people emailing us there at the top of the conversation. So feel free to do that. It's contact@bonsai.film. We answer every email. Every email. That's our commitment to you. You can also reach out to us, DM us on social at _bonsai creative. You can find us there or at that handle on Instagram, on Twitter, and TikTok. Wow, we're on TikTok. That's cool. But we're just getting started there. And you can just search for Bonsai Creative on Facebook. Or as my people in Florida say, Fade Book.
You can find us on, bro.
You can find us on Fade Book.
Fade Book.
Fade Book. Yeah, and just search for Bonsai Creative. If you want to reach out to Nick directly, it's nick@bonsai.film. And if you want to reach out to me, I love being contacted on Twitter, so you can find me at Flame in Your Heart or just search for Christopher Barkley. And as always, if you want a head start in your filmmaking journey, go to www.bonsai.film, where you can sign up for our newsletter, support this podcast, becoming a true fan, and get a million other resources. That's hyperbole, folks. But you can get a ton of resources there at the website. So with that, Nick, can you please leave us with the Bonsai Creative?
Of course. And I got to do it as one of my favorite characters, if you don't mind.
Please.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Be better. Be creative. Mr. Ray. And be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Nick, this has been a blast. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. You take it easy, bro.
Be good.
All right. Yeah. Peace.
You've been listening to the Make It Podcast. To find out more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You now have the opportunity to support the production of this podcast. If you love Make It and are a true fan of what we're trying to accomplish in the indie film community, please visit www.bonsai.film and click Contribute. Contributions start at only $5 monthly. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Bonsai Creative and on Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. You can provide feedback to us via email at contact@bonsai.film, and you can follow me, Chris, on Twitter at Flaming Your Heart. That's FLAMEINURHEART. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Services to explore a variety of offerings from keynotes and panels to pitch readiness assessments and so much more. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.